People go to work for a number of different reasons. Obviously, we have to deal with our economic reality. You got to pay the bills, you got to pay the rent, that kind of stuff. But there's other reasons too. Like one big reason besides that one that people go to work and try to get into good jobs is because they want to be somebody. They want to be somebody important. They want to have that social influence on others. You know, People who try to become leaders, people who try to become celebrities, or people who just try to become, supervisors in their particular career. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That desire to make a difference in the world. But then there's also a third reason, and that is a lot of times our careers are vehicles to allow us to achieve some goal that we always wanted to achieve. Children, as they grow up, they develop ideas about what they would like to accomplish in their life, and by choosing a particular career, they might be able to go towards that. Like traveling the world, for example, or learning new languages, or, building a house. Whatever it is that they desire to do, their career can take them there. Now, when most people go into the job market, when most people pursue a career, what they're trying to do is they're trying to find a good fit between what they want and what they expect and what the job expects of them. This is something we call the meaning mission fit, the degree of alignment between one's personal view of work and that particular company's missions. And just in general, if there's a greater fit, then people are going to be happier. You're going to be a happier employee if you feel like you fit in. And other people are going to be happier because, it rubs off on them. Being able to work with you just makes their career much more enjoyable. And in particular, when it's executives, the leader types of a business, when they have a greater alignment, we generally see them care more about the company. It's not just a job to them. It's something that they do genuinely care about. They care about the company's success. They care about the employee's happiness, things like job satisfaction and emotional well-being. It's important to find a job that fits you. It's important to find a place where you feel like you belong so that everybody in that place of work can benefit. Now, so when I talk about this, it definitely seems very important that you find a good job, but that's not really an accurate way to think about it. You don't really just find a job. What you do is you create a career. Now that term create is specific. It's very important to use that term because that refers to something we call the career construction theory. This idea that people actually build their careers through their own actions, which result from the interface of their personal characteristics and the social context that they find themselves in at this place of work. Just to give you an example, I am a professor at a local community college, and what I do looks out from the student's perspective, it probably looks very similar to what a lot of the other faculty do. We have tests, we have presentations, there's homework assignments, but the way I approach my career is completely different. The ideas I have about what I need to do and what's important and how to do it, those are all my own ideas. So I built this career. Nobody told me to make these videos. I wanted to make these videos. This is what I think my job is. So this is how I'm going to do my job. So career construction theory, it's all about how we kind of build this concept as to what our job is. And we don't just, do whatever people tell us. Obviously, for some jobs, you have to do very specific things, but how you go about doing it is really up to you. Now, in a previous video, I described Holland's personality theory, this whole idea that people have different types of personalities, which are realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. And in order to find a good job for you, you want to pursue jobs that match those personality styles. So people who pursue a career that's a good fit are just going to be more successful. They're going to be more satisfied with the job that they find themselves in. And furthermore, research done on the RIASEC model has shown that typically women are more so going to gravitate towards the social, artistic, and conventional types of jobs. But that's not to say women don't also go into those other types as well. And when you look at men and women and any particular one of these categories, you generally see, there's a lot of similarities there. There's similar effectiveness, similar personalities. So while I'm definitely not saying women aren't going to do like more realistic work or more investigative work, that's definitely not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that it's just generally, for whatever reason, less attractive to most women to pursue those types of careers. Another really popular theory when it comes to how people enter into a career is called the social cognitive career theory, or SCCT. And this whole idea is that your career choice, the career that you enter, that you create, is the result of an application of Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory. If you don't remember Albert Bandura, he was the guy that looked at how people learn in a social environment. And the way they do that is largely through observation and imitation, especially when it comes to things like self-efficacy. So when it comes to this social cognitive career theory, the career that you end up in is based on 4 things. There's 4 factors. Your degree of self-efficacy, so how good you are, or how good you think you are, your perceived ability. The next one is your outcome expectations, so how successful you think you're going to be, if you think that you're going to be able to do well in this particular career. The third factor would be interests, so just what you are excited about, the things that you like to do. And then the fourth factor is your choice goals, like the outcome you desire to achieve. Like, what is it you're trying to get out of, performing this job? And there's more complex versions of this theory that includes things like support and barriers and how those factor in to your career selection. But we don't need to go into that level of detail. But by far, one of the most well-known and talked about theorists is Donald Super. And he talked a lot about how people progress through life and enter into different kinds of occupations based on a few factors. So adults in the workforce are at different points along this continuum that we can call vocational maturity. This vocational maturity refers to the degree of congruence between what people are doing for their occupation and what is expected of them at that particular point in their life. And like I said, people progress. So from the age of birth to about 14 years of age, Super called that the growth stage. And this is where the individual is just learning about the meaning of work. Why do people work? What's the whole point of work? Stage 2 is exploration. So that's from the ages of about 15 to 24. This is where people start investigating and learning more about particular careers that they might want to enter into. Stage 3 is establishment. So this is between the ages of 25 and 44. This is where somebody typically has entered into a particular career and is now trying to advance as far as they can, climb up that career ladder. Stage 4 is maintenance. So this is between the ages of about 45 to 64. This is where the person basically has climbed that ladder as much as they can, and they're just going to stay at a nice, comfortable position wherever they find themselves at. And then stage 5 is decline. And that's where people, after being at this comfortable level for a while, they'll start to go down again. They'll start to decline and do less and less work over time until they do eventually retire. So as people are progressing through these different stages of their career, they're also going from one role to the next and back again. The Donald Super's roles were child, so this is where your primary occupation is just working with your parents. If you ever have to work with your parents, that's like your child role. If you play the role of a student, then you're working on your studies, you're learning, you're developing your skills and knowledge. The third role you could play is that of the leisurite, where you're just working on your hobbies and your personal goals. Fourth role would be that of a citizen, where you're working for the community. You're trying to make either your local community or our larger community better in some way. The fifth role is that of the worker, so that's where you're just working for money, basically. The sixth role is that of a parent, so this is where your occupation is largely towards guiding children. Now, they don't necessarily have to be your children, but that's your primary focus, is just on raising and guiding children. The seventh role is that of a spouse, so pretty self-explanatory. That's when you work on your relationship. You put a lot of effort and time into your relationship. And then the eighth role you could play is that of a homemaker, where you spend a lot of time doing chores and just maintenance and improvements on your home. And the way Donald Super combines these life stages and life roles is in something he calls the life career rainbow. So here's how it works. Now, the different colors in the rainbow are these different roles you could play. So you have child, student, leisurite, citizen, worker, parent, spouse, and homemaker. And as you progress through life, as you grow older, you will pass through those different stages of your occupation. So stage 1 is growth, 2 is exploration, 3 is establishment, 4 is maintenance, and then 5 is decline. And when we look at where people put their focus in these different roles and different stages, it generally looks something like this. So here you can see a series of circles appearing, and the larger the circle is, the more, commonly you play that role at that point in your life. So when you are under the age of 14, you're basically just going to be playing the role of a child, but you'll start playing the role of a student as you get a little bit older. And then as you move from 14 to 25, that exploration stage, now you're mostly going to be doing the student and the child role, but you'll probably start developing your hobbies and maybe start getting involved in the community and maybe even start some like part-time job or something like that. It's quite common for teenagers to start having to help around the house as well. And then once you get to the establishment stage, this is where for most individuals you don't really have much time for leisure anymore, and you have probably finished your studies at this point. So the primary emphasis of the establishment stage is just working. You're working for pay. And this is also a lot of the times when people get married and people start having babies, so they'll play the role of the spouse and the parent as well. And this is also around the same time that people will typically move out of the house into their own place, and now they have to learn all these new skills in being a homemaker. And then that progresses pretty steadily, but once you reach the maintenance stage, this is where people typically get kind of comfortable. The children are growing older and they're moving out of the house, so you don't really have to play the role of parent so much. Your job isn't really changing, your home life isn't really changing, but your parents are getting older now. And while you don't really, need their help anymore, you might find yourself working with them because they'll start to need your help. Aging parents do often become dependents and require a lot of help from their children. So you might find yourself much more involved in your parents' life than you used to. And then moving into the final stage of decline, this is where people, typically retire. So you don't have that work obligation anymore, and you have a whole lot more time for your community, to be a citizen, and a whole lot more time for yourself to be a leisurite. This is also typically when people just spend a lot more time with their spouse and a lot more time around the home, just improving things, fixing things, and so on. So that's the whole idea of the life career rainbow, is as you progress through your life, you're going to go up and down and play these different roles at different times, but everybody's different. I just wanted to give you an example of what a typical person's life would be like. So Donald Super's life career rainbow is very well known. It's been fairly influential, but he's had a lot of other ideas about how careers work and how people move through their careers. Like during adulthood, Super argues that people try to complete 3 particular developmental tasks. And this is actually a continuation of something we were talking about earlier. So during the teen years, I talked about these few tasks that teens complete, and this just leads to here. So the final job for a teenager to complete is that of implementation, where they start to try out jobs, try to gain experience. So that's the first task that you complete at the end of the teen years, or you could say at the beginning of the adult years. The second task that adults try to complete when it comes to their career is stabilization. Like they want to make sure they've made a good career choice and just ensure that is the case. This often involves just kind of investigating alternate options while they are still involved in their career. And then the third stage is that of consolidation, or I should say the third task, is that of consolidation, where Super argues people just try to, once they feel comfortable they've chosen the correct career for them, they try to advance up that career ladder as much as they can. But moving beyond Donald Super, there's a lot of other research that's been done on various aspects of career development and career expectations and things like that. And just in general, when it comes to a person's occupation and career expectations, they will change over time as a person changes in terms of their personality. As individual self-concept and self-efficacy is altered through experience, through unfortunate, loss perhaps, this will manifest in their career. So our interests change. And if this leads to a poor fit between our career and ourself, then a lot of times people will become disillusioned in their work and start to pursue other options. Another reason why people might want to pursue alternate options is if, their career changes. Instead of them changing, it's their career that's changing. And in that case, they might need to go back to school. They might need to learn new technology or something like that. That's actually pretty common for people halfway through the career to have to kind of like take a break and learn some new skills, learn some new tech. But when we look at people who are just first entering their careers, when we look at the younger workers, we see something in particular that's pretty interesting. It's called reality shock. So that refers to when what you've learned in the classroom does not transfer directly into what the real world expects of you. You hear this kind of stuff all the time from people working in various careers that, they were completely unprepared. All that stuff they learned at business school, all the stuff they learned at medical school, it doesn't help them when they actually get into the actual, place of work. So it kind of makes you wonder, like, why do we even have these classes? Why do we even have all these tests and things if it doesn't really translate that well? I can't give you an answer for all the different careers out there, but for a lot of the times, even if you don't see how it connects, there is a connection. And because a lot of the times it's hard to see that connection, it is important when you enter into a new career to find somebody to help you, learn the ropes, so to speak. You want a good mentor. You want a good coach to just help you adapt to this new way of life. This person you're looking for is basically like part teacher, part sponsor, part model, and part counselor. and they help you by facilitating on-the-job learning and prepare for future roles. Now, typically we see that people from underrepresented groups, they tend to benefit the most. Like women and minorities, they tend to benefit the most from having a good mentor. And mentors also get some benefit from doing this. They satisfy this need for generativity. I've mentioned that before, but we'll talk about that later in a later video. But one important thing to mention about mentors is that the quality and compatibility of that mentor are extremely important. In many cases, having a bad mentor, having a bad fit with that individual is worse than having none at all. So having a bad mentor, that can drag you down, cause some serious problems. And that might have an impact on the next thing I wanted to mention that's come from all the research we've done on entering into career and advancing up the ladder. It's job satisfaction. Job satisfaction refers to this positive feeling people get that results from appraisal of your work. Typically, middle-aged workers are more satisfied with their job if they get some kind of personal gratification. What really motivates them is intrinsic factors, not extrinsic. To put it in another way, people who are just starting their careers in their young adult life, they can be heavily motivated, like really powerfully motivated just by having a decent paycheck. But as you get older, that paycheck just doesn't seem so motivating. If they don't feel invested, if they don't genuinely care about the work they do and the products that they're producing, then that paycheck won't really count for much. They need to feel that intrinsic motivation. They value the joy of being productive, not just making money. And typically when it comes to the issue of job satisfaction, we see that white-collar workers tend to experience a greater increase in job satisfaction as they grow older compared to blue-collar workers. And it's important that you do have a good fit with your job. You want to have that meaning, mission, fit I was describing, because that will lead to higher levels of job satisfaction. And having a good mentor can also lead to higher levels of job satisfaction because you basically know your place, you know what the expectations of you are, and you believe in your company. If you don't have these kinds of things and you end up having very low job satisfaction, that could lead to alienation or burnout. Because the fact is, all jobs create some stress. Some jobs create a lot more stress than others, and this can lead to these kinds of problems. So alienation is when the worker feels like their work is meaningless and their efforts are devalued, or when they just don't see a connection between their input and the company's final product. And then burnout is a completely different thing. With burnout, the person just has this kind of depletion of their personal energy and motivation. They lose this occupational idealism, and they start to develop this feeling like they're being exploited. Typically, when it comes to burnout, these individuals do think that their job is important, and they do see the products of their input. They can't handle it anymore. The stress becomes too overwhelming. So alienation and burnout are very different things. And you'll see them in different contexts. Like burnout is most common in helping professions. People who spend a lot of time just assisting others, like nurses, for example. It's very common for like psychiatric nurses or just nurses in general to have severe stress that they deal with on a daily basis, and it can become overwhelming. Alienation, on the other hand, this is more so going to affect people who just feel alone. They feel lost. Like the lonely Walmart employee who just doesn't get to, socialize with any of the coworkers, and nobody seems to care when they clock in or clock out. That's kind of situation where you just feel kind of lost. That's going to lead to alienation. And while being in these particular kinds of jobs can lead to these, unfortunate consequences, there is something that fights against it. We just refer to this as passion. Passion for your career, passion for your occupation. So passion refers to this inclination towards the activity, in this case your job, that you like to do and you value and you want to invest your time and energy. So if you have a lot of passion for, your work as a nurse, then you're not going to suffer from alienation and burnout nearly as much as somebody else would. But there's actually two kinds of passion, and it's important that you have the healthy kind. The first kind, the unhealthy one, is called obsessive passion. So this is when you have difficulty disengaging fully from your thoughts about an activity, and this leads to a conflict with other important activities in your life. So if you think back to that life career rainbow illustration, this would be somebody whose work just dominates their time. They stop playing the role of a homemaker, they stop playing the role of a child or a parent, and they just focus all their attention on that of a worker. So clearly you can see how this could be a problem. If you're the father of two small kids, you can't just focus entirely on your work, or things are going to get bad in that home. So obsessive passion, being a workaholic, this is not going to help. This, in fact, in most cases, is going to actually wind up hurting your career aspects in the future, because a bad home life is going to lead to a bad, work situation. The healthy kind of passion is something we call harmonious passion. So this is when individuals care about their work. They want to do a good job, but they do not feel compelled to always be engaged in that activity. They feel like they're free to work and free to not work. So this is a kind of passion that's in harmony with other aspects of your life. It protects the individual from burnout and alienation. So I don't know what kind of passion you might have for your job, but just keep in mind, it's not healthy to always be on the clock. It's not healthy to always be thinking about your job, because those other aspects of your life will suffer as a result.